Have you ever faced a situation that felt so overwhelming, so impossible, that you couldn't see a way out? Maybe you're drowning in doubt, battling fear, or feeling the weight of frustration heavy on your shoulders. It's easy to feel stuck, to feel like there's no hope. But here's the truth. No matter how big your problems seem, no matter how dark the situation, God's promises are always bigger. His promises stand firm, unwavering, and they are greater than anything you face today. Life brings challenges that feel too heavy to bear at times. Financial crises can make us feel like we're sinking. Health struggles can leave us feeling powerless. Relationships strained by conflict can make us question if things will ever be okay again. But in every one of these moments, we can hold on to the truth that God's promises are bigger than our problems. Welcome. In this video, we'll explore a powerful truth: how God's promises can provide comfort, strength, and unwavering hope no matter the challenges you face. No matter how big or overwhelming your problems seem, His promises are always bigger. Understanding the bigness of God's promises. Let's begin by reflecting on the sheer size and power of God's promises. The Bible is filled with countless promises from God, each one far more than just words on a page. They are declarations of divine truth, declarations that have the power to change everything about our lives, our hearts, our outlook, our future. These promises are bigger than anything we could ever imagine. They're not limited by time, circumstance, or our understanding. Take Psalm 23:1, for example. David, a man who knew what it was like to face overwhelming challenges, says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Think about that for a moment. This is a promise from God about His provision. It means that God will meet every need we have: physical, emotional, spiritual. In the midst of uncertainty, the promise stands that He will provide, not just in some things, but in all things. When we truly grasp the magnitude of God's promise to provide, we realize that no circumstance is too big for Him. Whether you're in a season of abundance or scarcity, Psalm 23:1 reminds us that God is the shepherd who will lead us, protect us, and guide us to everything we need. It doesn't matter what we face in life, His provision is always greater, always more than enough. But God's promises don't just stop at provision. They extend to every area of our lives. In John 14:27, Jesus gives us another powerful promise. "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you." Now think about that. The peace of God isn't a peace that depends on our external circumstances. It's not a peace that fades when things get hard. It's constant, unshakable, and it's available to us at all times. Imagine that kind of peace. A peace that doesn't depend on the storm around us, but on the presence of God within us. No matter how chaotic life gets, His peace transcends it all. This is the kind of peace Jesus promises to give us, a peace that stays with us even in the hardest times, when everything around us seems uncertain. The peace of God is not like the world's peace that comes and goes depending on circumstances. His peace is constant. It's the peace that helps us sleep at night, even when we're unsure of what tomorrow holds. It's the peace that fills our hearts, no matter the storm we may face. That's the power of God's promises. They're bigger than the things we worry about. They reach beyond our struggles and offer us a peace that nothing in this world can take away. So as you face today, remember that God's promises are not just words. They are divine declarations that carry the weight of eternity. His provision, His peace, His presence, these promises are bigger than anything you could ever imagine. And when we grasp the enormity of them, we realize that no problem is too big, no situation too hopeless, because God's promises are always bigger. The power of God's promises over your problems. Now, let's talk about how these promises hold power when life gets hard. We've all been there, when the problems seem bigger than we can handle. Whether it's a financial crisis, health struggles, relationship issues, or personal loss, it's easy to feel like everything is falling apart. But here's the truth. God's promises aren't just for the easy times. They're for the tough times too. In Isaiah 41 verse 10, God speaks directly to our fears and worries. "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." These words remind us that no matter how heavy the burden, we are never alone in our struggle. God's strength is greater than our weakness. When the weight of the world feels unbearable, God promises to be our source of strength. In those moments when we feel like we can't go on, His power sustains us. And that's the thing about God's promises. They are bigger than the problems we face. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, God speaks to our weakness, telling us, "But He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." When we feel weak, when we feel like we don't have enough, that's when God's grace and power can shine the brightest. Our weakness becomes the perfect opportunity for God's strength to be made known. In those moments of vulnerability, God doesn't leave us stranded. His grace covers us, His strength lifts us up, and His promises remind us that we can move forward even when the road seems tough. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have it all figured out. What matters is that we trust in His promises, because with God, nothing is impossible. So, no matter what you're facing today, remember this: God's promises are bigger than your problems. He's already provided everything you need to face what lies ahead, and His power is available to you even in the middle of your struggle. Trusting God's promises in the midst of struggle. Here's the truth. Trusting in God's promises doesn't mean that the struggle will disappear overnight. It doesn't mean that life will suddenly become perfect or free from pain. What it means is that in the midst of life's storms, we can find peace, hope, and assurance knowing that God is still at work. In Romans 8:28, we are reminded of this powerful truth, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Even in the hardest moments, when everything seems out of control, God is still working behind the scenes for your good. You may not see it right away, but He is always at work, weaving everything together for a purpose you can trust. That doesn't mean we won't feel pain. It doesn't mean we won't have moments of doubt, frustration, or weariness. Life is still challenging. But what it does mean is that God is with us through it all. He's holding us, guiding us, and promising that, even in the struggle, He's working everything out for His glory and for our good. When we trust in God's promises, we find that we're never truly alone. His presence is constant, even when the world feels like it's falling apart. God's strength becomes our strength, His peace becomes our peace, and His faithfulness will see us through. So yes, you may still face challenges. You may still feel the weight of the struggle, but when you hold on to God's promises, you begin to see that these challenges are not the end of your story. They are part of a much greater narrative, one where God is always in control, and His plan is bigger than anything we can imagine. You don't have to have all the answers or understand every moment of your journey. What you can trust is that God's promises are true. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you, and His plan for your life will unfold perfectly in His time. Living in the light of God's promises. Living in the light of God's promises means choosing to focus on His truth rather than the weight of our circumstances. It's a conscious decision we make every day to fix our eyes on His word, on His love, and on the eternal hope He offers, rather than being consumed by the temporary problems around us. When we truly fix our eyes on God's promises, we begin to see our problems through a different lens. Instead of seeing ourselves as victims of our circumstances, we recognize that, through Christ, we are victors. We are not defined by the challenges we face, but by the power and hope found in God's promises. In those difficult moments, it's so easy to feel overwhelmed, to feel small. But when we walk in the light of God's promises, we walk in the assurance that His truth is greater than our feelings and circumstances. He's promised to be with us every step of the way, even when the road seems uncertain. As we hold on to the promises of God, we are empowered to live with purpose, joy, and peace, even in the midst of struggles. His promises fuel our ability to serve others with love, to find joy in relationships, and to live a life that reflects His grace. We don't have to wait for our problems to disappear before we step into the fullness of life God has for us. God's promises remind us that His plan is always greater than the problems we face. He has a purpose for us, a plan for our future. And when we trust in Him, we can walk confidently, knowing that His way is always the best way. So, choose to live in the light of God's promises. When you do, you'll find that your problems no longer hold the same power over you. You'll experience peace in the storm, joy in the journey, and a deeper connection to the purpose God has for your life. No matter what you're facing today, whether it's a mountain of uncertainty or a storm of struggle, remember this: God's promises are always bigger than your problems. Whatever you're walking through right now, He is right there with you. His word is filled with promises of peace, strength, and victory, and those promises are not just words on a page, they're truths that can change your life. In times of hardship, when everything around you feels uncertain, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. But God's word reminds us that His power is greater than any problem, and His promises are steadfast, no matter the circumstances. When you feel weak, His strength is perfect. When you feel lost, His guidance is sure. When you feel afraid, His presence brings peace that surpasses all understanding. I want you to take a moment right now to think about what you're going through. Whatever struggle you're facing, bring it before God in prayer. And remember, His promises are greater than any fear, any doubt, or any challenge you might be facing. Trust in His word, lean on His strength, and know that just like the sun's only to rise again, God will never leave you in the darkness. His promises bring light, and His grace is more than enough to carry you through. Keep your eyes on Him, and let His peace fill your heart. Thank you for spending this time with us today. If this message touched your heart, we encourage you to share it with someone who needs to hear this reminder. And if you're walking through a tough season right now, we'd love to pray with you. Leave a comment below and share your prayer requests. We believe in the power of prayer and would be honored to stand with you in faith. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a message that could inspire and uplift you. And if you've been encouraged today, share this video with someone else who needs to be reminded that God's promises are greater than their problems. You're never alone in this journey. Take heart, trust in His promises, and remember, God's got you. Take care, stay strong, and may God's peace and blessings overflow in your life. God bless you.